Wonderful. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Samata Pattinson, and I'm just really excited about this conversation about the business of circularity. You know, as a concept, circularity is not a new idea. We know that nature thrives on circular systems, and we've often taken its lead. And now we're having a conversation about how this translates to kind of the business world. So thank you for being with us, Oni and Danielle. I'd love to just start by having a conversation about on the ground. You know, when you're talking about whether it's from startups or kind of global organizations, when we talk about circular models, what are we seeing is actually working in practice? And what do you see has the potential? It might be on the sidelines right now. It might be a few kind of initiatives here and there. But what do you think has the potential to really go mainstream and, you know, really transform business as a whole? I'll start with you, Ani, if that's okay.
Thanks. I like the fact that you said circularity is not a new thing.
Yes.
I'm from India. It seems like we invented it. We don't waste anything because we can't afford to. I just want to start this idea of where it's making sense. And I just want to start from, I just came from a conference in Hanoi on startups. And it was startups on clean tech. There were so many young entrepreneurs that are actually working specifically on this. And I'm really interested in things that are actually working and profitable right now. So there was a group of people from Indonesia that are actually taking rice husk, which normally farmers burn, and converting it to biochar, which is a very high quality fertilizer that is the farmers are buying back. And there's evidence that 30% increase in productivity of the farm of rice farms. So this is a very good example of something very obvious, straightforward, that is actually people to figure out how to make money out of it so that it can work.
Amazing.
Another group in Vietnam is taking waste, agricultural waste, and creating pallets. You know, the pallets that are more and more, that are stronger, cheaper, and better. And so point I'm making is that there are opportunities to make money, and I am interested that things of that is already happening. But it's also happening in larger scale. IKEA, for example, in Netherlands, is buying back or taking back mattresses that used to go to landfills or burned. They've taken back 1.7 million mattresses, 85% of the material being reused. So these are actually happening. I just want to say why we're even having this discussion is that we have an economy today that is based on this flawed assumption that nature, or the things we get from nature, is unlimited. Yeah. Air, water, material, minerals, anything you can think about that. And that we know now is not true anymore. So I think we need to be focused on not circularity as a thing, but a different way of doing business that actually takes less from nature, but at the same time does not compromise our prosperity, and which is the businesses we're talking about. And I think there are enough examples in the world today. It's a question of learning from it and scaling it.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think the point you made, and it leads me to my question for you, Danielle, is this idea of this extractive model that we've worked on, you know, the take, make, waste idea, and how essentially, you know, we are in a resource-restricted world. But I also love the point you made, that Arnie made around the business case for this, because often I think circular solutions are seen as a nice thing to do. It's a good thing to do for the planet. It's a good thing to do for these communities. And I think the business world really needs to see the business case for these solutions, and you've given some of those. But with your work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, could you perhaps give us some insight into what that looks like, what the landscape looks like from your perspective with the work you're doing?
Sure, and you know, I think the beauty of the circular economy is that there's such a clear environmental and climate case, but there's also such a clear economic case, and that's across different domains, and it's across built environment and furniture and food and fashion and tech. And I think tech actually is one of the best examples right now of how there's a strong economic business driver for this. So e-waste is our fastest growing waste stream. You could essentially circle the entire globe with 40-ton trucks of e-waste 3 times, and that's how much we're developing, and it is accelerating really every day. And you all know that, right? How much tech do you have on you right now? You have a phone and a laptop and probably a watch. I have a ring. Like there's tech all around us. We wear it, we see it, we feel it. the amount of critical raw material that is resident in our tech is much more per gram than what's resident in the ground, right? And so we have this extractive model where we just go directly to, we have to mine the stuff that builds our tech out of the ground. We got to make it, and we got to throw it away. But what is in our landfills, these tech products are piling up. We're literally sitting on gold, right? If you have a block of gold ore, you can extract about a ton block. You can extract 5 milligrams of gold out of that. The same amount of e-waste, you can extract 575 milligrams, right? It's more effective, it's more efficient, and that's why that's the business case, right? That is the large tech companies, tech adjacent companies. What company is not a tech company right now? Are looking at that end of life, or end of first life, I should say, as a way to solve their business challenge.
Yeah, did you have something to jump in?
Such a good example so where is this thing working? And one very good example, I'm sure 80% of people here has an Apple phone or Apple Watch. Apple, because they have stores everywhere and they buy back phones, they're actually, because they have a backward supply chain there available that everyone doesn't have, they are actually recycling used phones at a scale that you just said, where they have shown, the evidence shows that a ton of recycled phone produces, I forget, 25,000 times or 25 times more gold and copper than a ton of ore. So it is actually financially much better, not only just because it's good for the earth, it is just a better business proposition if you have the backward supply chain that this particular company does have.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, so something you've said, and also Danielle from your prior point, kind of leads me to this next thinking. I think, this idea of circularity, essentially meaning recycling, is something that we perhaps could unpick a little bit. But then also, in the idea that this is about businesses rethinking their strategies, because you're talking about moving from a focus on like single use or singularity to circularity, that means it's a shift in your business strategy as well. Would you say that that's also a reimagining of your relationship with end users? Because if part of the models of circularity around reusing, refurbishing, that means the relationship is changing because you're asking customers to come back in and to mend and to kind of spend more time. So I think there's 2 questions in there. Could you unpack a little bit this idea of circularity versus recycling and how that translates, and how you think businesses are navigating shifting from like a single-use system strategy to one that has just a different connection with the end users?
Sure, yeah, I'll start that and would love to hear your perspective. So I think in terms of shifting, you're talking about shifting the nature of the relationship with end users. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, well, let's get to your recycling question first. I'm picking apart your question. So one of the biggest problems with the circular economy is people assume it's about waste and trash, but actually it's about upstream design and how do we build into the design of our products and our systems and the ways we think and our mindsets. And this is where AI is actually really useful right now to retrain our workforce. How do we think about the second and third and fourth life of a product when we're building it in? And so that is very much a systems change that is happening in real time in businesses right now. It's not being incentivized right now, but from policy perspective, so that's part of what we need to work on. One really good example that I think gets to your second question around the relationship with the end user, and the Apple example is a good one as well, which is that one of the big barriers to circularity has been that the original manufacturer and the original retailer then loses their relationship and their revenue if they set things up for the re-X models, as we call them, remanufacture, resell. And what we need to figure out how to do is incentivize, and this is where this room is so powerful, right? From a financial perspective, incentivize an industry-wide and a sector-wide circular model. And so Apple is a great example of kind of a closed model. And like, how do we take that Apple model where it's so easy to bring back your iPhone and get compensated for that to something that works for the entire mobile industry, which is, again, one of the biggest contributors to our e-waste stream right now.
That's a great answer, thank you. And Arnie, I just wondered, off the back of that, if you had either any thoughts on that changing nature, with the changing nature of business and community and society in that context of what she said, but also you've spoken a little bit about like the competitive edge that comes with sustainability, and like historically that idea of being without having to spur kind of an innovative solution, making do with what you have, has kind of spawned this innovation and this great solution that was unexpected is a fascinating concept. So I was curious to see, what are your themes or thoughts on sustainability and circularity as a tool to drive competitiveness, but also to still ensure that there is that brand trust in those ongoing relationships that are so crucial for business?
Yeah, I think, for us to think about circularity, we should be thinking just good business, right? That this is not a separate thing we need to do. This is what would make you competitively, you will have access. So you asked the question, what the user or the consumer behavior, I'm always thinking about what should companies do, or like Apple's story, you can actually buy, you get compensated, so that's their model, right? The question is, and what can policy do? But on the brand, I mean, I go back to IKEA example. They learned from their mattress thing, and now they actually have circularity hubs for their furniture. You can actually bring your furniture. So that actually is a brand positive thing for them to do, and they're actually building on it. I want to say that sometimes in some businesses where policy can bring businesses together to work together to take Apple is doing just for themselves, they're not buying any phone, right? So in India has ambition to grow their renewable energy capacity. They're about 225 gigawatts. They want to do 425 gigawatts. And that will require a massive amount of batteries in just for energy, and it will require it for automobile. They have 25% goal of EV by 2030. These are massive numbers that require. India basically imports most of its lithium. Today's battery technology, lithium, that might not be in the future. So they have created a situation where battery collaboration of battery recycling by policy, encouraging every company to do so because they don't have lithium. So for them, it's not only a business competitiveness, it's a country competitiveness on that particular material. And that policy has increased 50% more recycling in a very short time. So sometimes it's not just a business thing, it's also a country-level competitive advantage to figure out how to do this when you know you need it, but you actually don't have it. So we need to explore this to make it a business proposition that is, I think, is true, but it's not evident.
Yes, yeah, that's well said. And I think just coming back to that point around kind of a business solution, I was interested in this idea of scalability. So often, you'll hear about initiatives or pilots or schemes that have developed a really great solution, whether it's a material or it's a different way to do something. And often there's a question around, well, how do you scale that if you're a business across however many different countries and different contexts of social, political, and all of those different things? Are there any good examples or things that come to mind when you think about scaling circular business solutions and maybe the opportunities for that or some of the challenges?
So if in some domains, like e-waste, like plastics, we just need to really build out our infrastructure. There's no real way around it. There are things that we can do around the edges, but ultimately we need to build out our infrastructure for recollection and processing. But one of the real bright spots that I've heard recently, we work with H&M closely in our fashion work, and what they have done, I think, is one of what we could see as a model for scale. You can't think of a brand that has larger reach, right, than H&M from just a fashion and retail perspective. And what they have done is moved their circular business models, really their pre-loved clothes, and integrated that fully with their retail experience, digital experience, in-store experience, so that you're not going to, the dusty corner of their store to look at their pre-loved selection, but it's really integrated into the marketing and the branding and the merchandising of the rest of the store, and they've seen their percentage of pre-loved sales skyrocket because of that, because particularly Gen Z is oriented around thrifting, right? There's a brand and there's an identity around that, but when the average consumer, the non-cool Gen Zer, right, walks into the store and has that choice, we are more inclined to make it versus the identifying to go through that door and say, I'm going to buy thrift today. It's just part of your kind of natural course of doing business.
Okay, great. And last question, I think, because we're just at time. But my last question was really around this idea of kind of end of life. And knowing, circular business solutions, we're talking about what happens afterwards. I wondered whether you, and Oni, I'd love your thoughts on this, particularly around resource. Are you seeing an increased awareness around our dependency on these key resources across countries, but are you seeing collaborations that you didn't maybe necessarily expect might happen, whether it's across borders or across industries, to find solutions when in the face of potential scarcity and so on?
This is the last question. I hate to end with not an upbeat tone, but I really do hate it. But the question you asked me, is there awareness? No, not enough. I mean, in this room, I'm sure everyone is in favor. I'll give you two statistics that, and maybe Danielle will add to it. Last year, we lost 10% of tropical forest. We only have 7% tropical forest left. And oil and natural gas companies made $1 trillion more than they had planned. These two things happened legally. No one did illegal things here. That is the system we have. That is the system that's getting rewarded, or absolute extraction. So if the system doesn't change, these things can't thrive, what we're talking about. The system, the economic system has to reward it. So no, I don't think there's enough awareness. There's enough solutions out there for them to scale. The system has to economically reward it, encourage it, and that is the change we need. I really apologize. I really would have wanted a really optimistic message. It's her. Danielle's going to do it.
Danielle, you're going to take us to a high note.
I don't know if I can.
It's okay.
I would say that the high note is in the facts, right? What we laid out today, the examples we laid out today, there are very clear models where circular economy makes economic and environmental sense. The linear model only makes economic sense, and so there's a logic that can drive us forward here, but we need this room to expand. Only a little over 7% of our economy is circular right now. We need to get to at least 20% in the next 10 years if we have hopes of reaching our climate, environmental, and economic prosperity goals, honestly. So that's the high note, constructive hope, but I do think it's a foundation that we're coming from.
Okay, thank you both so much for your time. Thank you.